Windows 1.0. Back in 1985, if you wanted to do anything on a computer, you basically had to be a part-time librarian and a full-time typist. You stared at a blinking green cursor on a black screen, praying you remembered the right magic words to open a folder. Then came Windows 1.0. People think it was this brand new engine, but it actually sat on top of MS-DOS, like a fancy tablecloth over a rugged wooden workbench. It was clumsy, and the windows couldn't even overlap. They just sat side by side, like tiles in a bathroom. Microsoft even included a game called Reversi, because people were actually terrified of the mouse back then. Most folks had never clicked a button before, so they used the game to sneakily learn how to point and click without realizing they were being trained. It was a humble start for something that would eventually run the world. Windows 3.1. By the early 90s, Windows started to feel like it finally went through puberty and grew some muscle. This was Windows 3.1, the version that turned the PC into a household staple. It required a whopping 2 megabytes of RAM, which sounds like a joke today, but felt like owning a supercar back then. This version introduced multitasking in a way that actually felt usable, allowing you to jump between a calculator and a word processor without the whole machine throwing a tantrum. It also gave us the TrueType font system, which meant what you saw on the screen actually looked like what came out of the printer. Suddenly, everyone was a graphic designer, making flyers with 15 different fonts. It was also the era where Minesweeper became the ultimate productivity killer in offices everywhere, teaching a whole generation how to use logic while pretending to work. Windows 95. If Windows 3.1 was a step forward, Windows 95 was a giant leap that felt like landing on the moon. Microsoft spent millions on marketing, even hiring the Rolling Stones to sing about the new Start button. That button changed everything. It gave the computer a front door, a place where all your stuff lived. This was also the birth of Plug and Play, a feature designed to stop the nightmare of manually configuring every piece of hardware you bought. Before this adding, a sound card felt like performing open heart surgery on your PC. Windows 95 tried to automate that handshake between the parts and the software. It was the first time Windows truly felt like its own operating system rather than just a guest living in DOS's basement. Even the long file names were a miracle. You could finally name a document my very important essay instead of something cryptic like essay01.doc. Windows 98. Windows 98 was like the polished, reliable older brother of 95. It didn't try to reinvent the wheel, but it made the wheel much faster and shinier. The big story here was the internet. It felt like Microsoft realized the web was going to be huge and decided to bake Internet Explorer right into the crust of the operating system. This led to a massive legal battle later. But for the average user, it just meant being online was easier than ever. It also brought much better support for USB devices. Back then, USB was still the new kid on the block, and Windows 98 helped it become the universal language of hardware. There was a funny moment during the public demo where the system crashed and showed a blue screen of death right in front of Bill Gates, proving that even a polished system still had a bit of a temper. Windows XP. Imagine taking the power of an industrial workstation and wrapping it in a bright, colorful candy shell. That was Windows XP. Before this, home users and business pros used different versions of Windows, but XP unified them under a single rock-solid core called NT. It replaced the boring gray boxes with the Luna theme, full of bright blues and greens, that famous wallpaper of a rolling green hill under a blue sky. It's an actual unedited photograph taken in California, and it might be the most viewed image in human history. XP was so stable and user-friendly that people refused to let go of it for over a decade. It introduced ClearType, which made text on flat panel monitors look crisp instead of blurry, saving our eyes from endless strain. Even today, you'll still find XP running on ATMs or old factory computers because it was just that reliable. Windows Vista is often remembered as the black sheep of the family, but it was actually a pioneer that was just 2 ahead of its time. It introduced the Aero interface, which used the computer's graphics card to create glass-like transparency and 3D effects. It looked incredible, but it was a resource hog that made older PCs feel like they were running through thick mud. The most annoying part was user account control. Those constant pop-ups asking, "Are you sure?" every time you tried to move a file. Microsoft was trying to fix the security holes of the XP era by putting a bouncer at every door. But the bouncer was just too chatty. Despite the hate, Vista introduced the modern search bar in the Start menu, letting you find apps just by typing their name. It was a beautiful, secure mess that paved the way for something much better. Windows 7. If Vista was a rough draft, Windows 7 was the final masterpiece. It took the beauty and security of Vista, but trimmed the fat until the system ran like a finely tuned sports car. This version introduced pinning to the taskbar, allowing us to keep our favorite apps just one click away at all times. It also brought us AeroSnap, that satisfying feeling when you drag a window to the side of the screen, and it perfectly fills exactly half the space. Under the hood, Microsoft used something called the MinWin kernel, which made the core of the system much lighter and faster. Windows 7 became the new gold standard, replacing XP in the hearts of tech enthusiasts everywhere. It felt invisible in the best way possible, staying out of your way and letting you get your work done, without any drama or unnecessary interruptions. Windows 8 was the moment Microsoft decided to throw the script out the window and start over. They looked at the rise of tablets and the iPad and panicked, thinking the desktop was dead. They removed the Start button, the very thing that made Windows famous, and replaced it with a screen full of giant, colorful squares called Live Tiles. It was a bold experiment, but for people using a mouse and keyboard, it felt like trying to eat soup with a fork. The system was split between a sleek tablet interface and the traditional desktop, leading to a confusing identity crisis. Interestingly, Windows 8 was incredibly fast at booting up, because it used a hybrid shutdown method that saved the state of the system kernel to the hard drive. It was technically impressive, but socially awkward, proving that you can't force people into the future before they're ready to leave the past. Windows 10. Microsoft realized they went a bit too far with the tablet craze and used Windows 10 to apologize to their core fans. They brought back the Start menu, but kept the best parts of the Live Tiles tucked neatly inside it. This version was marketed as the last version of Windows, with the idea that it would just get constant updates forever, like a smartphone app. It introduced the concept of virtual desktops, letting you have one screen for work and another for gaming without needing multiple monitors. It also saw the rise of Windows Hello, which uses infrared cameras to recognize your face, so you can log in without typing a password. Windows 10 was the great unifier, running on everything from tiny, low-power laptops to massive gaming rigs. It was the version that finally made the transition from the old-school software model to the modern, always-connected era feel natural and easy. Windows 11. Windows 11 is where Windows finally decided to put on a tuxedo and go upscale. The first thing you notice is the taskbar, which moved to the center of the screen, looking a bit like a certain fruit-themed competitor. Everything is rounded, soft, and translucent, using a new design language called Mica that makes windows feel like they're floating. But it's not just about looks. It requires a specific security chip called a TPM 2.0, which caused a bit of a stir because it meant many older computers couldn't upgrade. This version is built for the modern world of multitasking with snap layouts that help you organize multiple windows with a single click. It's also the most AI-integrated version yet, with Copilot living right on your taskbar to help you summarize documents or generate images. It's Windows for the creator era, focusing on making the complex stuff feel simple and elegant. Which Windows version defined your childhood? Was it the colorful rolling hills of XP, or the sleek glass of Win 7? Drop a comment below, and let's argue about which one was actually the best. If you enjoyed this deep dive into PC history, hit subscribe for more hardware nostalgia.